Hey, how's it going everybody? In this video, we will compare the displays on the iQOO 15 and the OnePlus 15, particularly for HDR content consumption because I am an HDR fanatic. We will compare HDR playback on YouTube, on Netflix, on Amazon Prime, local HDR game streaming from a gaming laptop. But first, here are the specifications. The iQOO 15's display is slightly larger and simply more capable. It has a higher resolution and higher brightness capabilities, which is critical for HDR. In fact, that's what I'm most interested in. The main advantage of the OnePlus 15, at least on paper, is the slightly higher 165Hz refresh rate. So firstly, let's talk about the resolution. Here I must say that you will be hard pressed to tell any difference between the 2K and 1.5K displays at this screen size. Both are well above 400 pixels per inch. The higher resolution on the iQOO 15 isn't making any practical difference in my opinion. Next negligible difference in my opinion is the refresh rate. I'm not an esports gamer since I have a real job and I can't deal with toxic sweats online, but I cannot really tell the difference between 120 FPS and 165 FPS on Call of Duty Mobile. Maybe the OnePlus feels just a touch more responsive, but that might be placebo. Look, going from 60Hz to 120Hz saves approximately 8.33 milliseconds per frame as we go from 16.67 milliseconds down to 8.33 milliseconds for each frame. Meanwhile, going from 120Hz to 165Hz saves just 2.27 milliseconds per frame as we go from 8.33 milliseconds down to 6.06 milliseconds, which is barely noticeable. In my opinion, the minimum jump next should be 240Hz for a noticeable improvement to responsiveness and motion clarity. Right now, you cannot even use 165Hz in the UI. Maybe that will come with future updates, but right now you can only apply 165Hz on Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram, and you have to enable it in the developer options. And yes, 165Hz does feel extremely fluid, but unless it is available system-wide, I can't get behind it. Right now, the only way to get 165Hz system-wide is to root and flash a specific Magisk module. Okay, next let's check out the brightness. So outdoors using auto brightness, the iQOO 15 does get just a touch brighter than the OnePlus 15. Indoors using auto brightness and manually setting max brightness, somehow the OnePlus 15 gets brighter in my test. But if you disable auto brightness while setting max brightness, then the iQOO 15 gets a touch brighter. Okay, now before we compare brightness for video playback, I want to point this out for the nth time.
Let me make it clear. It's not possible to capture these displays accurately with any camera because even the best mirrorless camera does not come close to matching the dynamic range of your eyes. Your eyes can see the details in the brightest highlights and also see details in the darkest darks, which is simply not possible with the camera. Let me give you an example. Here are both the phones playing back an HDR clip. I will put the phones to maximum brightness. Now you see how it appears in the video footage. It appears all blown out with a lack of contrast and saturation. But in reality, I can clearly see all the details in the highlights, all the details in the shadows with great contrast and saturation. But my camera cannot capture that. So what I have to do is I can either underexpose the camera and try to properly expose for the brightest highlights so that they don't appear blown out, and keep the same camera settings for the other phone so that I can show you the difference in brightness. Or I can expose for the shadows and sacrifice the highlights. I cannot show both at once. Now since HDR for me is all about peak brightness impact, like brighter the highlights, the better is the experience for me. So I will expose for the highlights. So whichever phone will appear more blown out on camera will be the display with the brighter highlights. Again, it's not blown out in real life. I'm emphasizing that. It is just how it appears on camera.
Okay, first let's take a look at SDR brightness, and the iQOO 15 is clearly brighter. Around 15% brighter to my eyes in real life. Both are very bright, but as we are comparing side by side, the iQOO is clearly brighter. Again, neither of the displays are overexposing the image in real life. It's just that iQOO's display is clearly more capable in terms of sheer brightness, which is why the camera is overexposing it. Next, let's take a look at the HDR brightness, which is my favorite. Starting with YouTube. Now this is a clip mastered for 2000 nits and the story is much the same. The panel used in the iQOO 15 is simply better for HDR. It is more capable in terms of its brightness output. The image on the iQOO is a lot more punchy and has a deeper HDR impact. Again, The iQOO is not overexposing in real life. In real life, the image is just as vibrant as the OnePlus, but it is just brighter. It's emitting more light and is absolutely dazzling. I have seen some YouTubers online who use vague terms like OnePlus is controlling the highlights and shadows. That means nothing. The panel on the OnePlus is simply less capable. It does not have the same light emitting capabilities as the iQOO 15. Take a look at this cyberpunk clip. All the neon lights are simply brighter on the iQOO, not overexposed or anything. The display itself is emitting more light, and that's why the camera is overexposing it compared to the OnePlus. Next up, let's take a look at some real world HDR content on Netflix. And once again, there is a tangible difference. The iQOO is simply more HDR-ish, if that makes sense. Brighter across the board. Next up is Amazon Prime, and at this point, I might sound like a broken record. The iQOO's display is a good 20% brighter for HDR content. The HDR impact is simply better both in high APL scenes and low APL scenes. Finally, my favorite activity, which is local HDR game streaming from my gaming laptop to my OLED devices. Here you first have to calibrate the HDR rendering by looking at the preview on the phone screen, since you are calibrating the HDR for the phone's display. First, I tried the still gorgeous Far Cry 4, and here Windows Auto HDR is rendering the game in HDR since Far Cry 4 does not have native HDR pipeline. And it's the same old, same old. The iQOO is more punchy, brighter, and provides more HDR impact. Next up is Hogwarts Legacy, and this game provides native HDR support and it is still the same. The iQOO's HDR capabilities is just better than the OnePlus. Alright guys, that's it for this video. I have no doubt in my mind that iQOO 15 clearly has the better display, and this has been true for my previous iQOO phones as well, like iQOO 13 and iQOO Neo 10. iQOO and Vivo do provide the best displays for HDR content in my experience. Now the OnePlus 15's display is not bad or anything, it is still great. Most people, 99.9% of people will be more than satisfied with this display. It is bright, vivid, fast, smooth, but we are comparing here, and so in terms of the comparison side by side, the iQOO 15 is clearly better. So with that said, thanks a lot for watching. Make sure to like, share and subscribe. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.